So today is December 14th, 2023. It is 14:30, 20:30 hours or 20:35 out. My goodness. 2:35 p.m. on December 14th. And this is the Board of Directors special meeting for the Windham School District. And we're calling the meeting to order. So first off, I did have some people reaching out regarding this and wanting to have some public comment, and wanted to know what the other board members felt about that, as that was not warned on the agenda.
Yeah, that was not intentional, actually, on our part. Might have just been an oversight, but you have the beginning to be able to adjust the agenda as you see fit. So if you wish to add that as a board member, you can.
Yeah, so, I think we should probably have public comment.
Okay. So we can start off with public comment. Is there anyone that has a public comment?
Russ has his hand up.
Oh, there we go. Russ, is that
yeah,
Russ?
I would just like to remind participants that if the chair of the meeting acknowledges you, you can speak. Speaking out of turn or shouting out while someone else is speaking is not appropriate. We should have this meeting with a lot of decorum and make sure things happen carefully. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Crystal, is that Crystal Corview?
Yes, it is. I'm just making sure my correspondence was received, and I'm not sure who the host is, but chat doesn't seem to be disabled.
Oh, yeah, I see there's a chat here.
I think I've disabled it. That chat came in before I disabled it. It is now disabled, I believe.
And Crystal, I can acknowledge, I believe you sent the email pretty recently. So yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Are there any other people here for public comment?
Hey, I'm driving. So my public comment was going to be coming after, right, the executive session is happening and then a thing about CASID is happening. So I just had a question after all of that, if that's possible.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Is Russ, I see your mic is still on. Is there something that you would like to add?
No, I don't.
Okay, and Crystal, your hand was up. Is that, oh, nope. John Gordon, did I see your hand up?
No.
Okay, well, I am not seeing any hands up. So if anyone else,
I would like to make comment.
Oh, okay.
For Abby, it's Jenna Kramer.
Hi, Jenna. Rory and Daniel, do you approve of Jenna making a comment?
Sure.
Hi, just in the question that we're thinking about right now, I just wanted to say that I think that there's a lot of opportunity for the school to be amazing, and there's so much potential. So in the thinking that maybe it can't work, I think with the supports and what it needs, it could be phenomenal. And I think it could be, I would imagine sending my kids there, and I think there's a lot of room for this like amazing little culture to grow.
Thank you, Jenna. Is there anyone else with public comment before we move into executive session? Okay, so next on the agenda is I'll make a motion for the board to enter executive session under 1 VSA Statute 313A1, after making a specific finding that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved at a substantial disadvantage. E, pending or probable civil litigation or prosecution to which the public body is or may be a party. F, confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the body. May I get a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? I don't see any, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, I am going to pause the recording and move people into the waiting room.
All right, it is 15:55 or 3:55, and we are coming back into open session from executive session.
All right, I would like to make a motion. I motion to temporarily cease operations at the Windham Elementary School due to staffing issues and to pay tuition to educate students at the Townsend School for the remainder of the 2023-2024 school year, effective January 1st, 2024, which is required for the sound administration of the Windham School District and is proper under Title 16. And before we get to a vote, I'd like to do have the board go into discussion a little bit, and along with you, Bob, and then open up for public comment before we vote.
Right. You still need a second on the motion.
Danielle, I'll second your motion.
All right, thank you. And Bob, I believe you have a little bit of background here.
Sure. So, as many folks on the call probably are aware, beginning back in early November, the board sought to fill a vacant teaching principal position at Windham School. We tried posting through a variety of methods, meaning we tried posting for a teacher and a separate principal. We tried posting for a teaching principal. So 3 different posts were shared out there. Recently, the committee, including parents, administration from the SU, and board member, interviewed 2 candidates, and neither were recommended to the board for hire. And so we have basically remaining a provisionally licensed staff member, and that staff member really ought to be under the supervision of a licensed principal, which we have a temporary situation with Jen McCusick from the SU filling in, and we've had a series of a couple different people subbing in the teaching role as well, who have been unlicensed. So under this motion, what the board is motioning to do and purporting to do is to utilize Title 16, Section 563, subsection 2, which allows for boards to do any action that is required for the sound administration of the school district. And so they have decided upon an action to ensure that the students of Windham School are educated in an appropriate manner. This meeting today, if this motion passes, it's actually a 2-step process, because the board has to agree to this plan, this proposal. And then secondarily, they need to motion to authorize the school's attorney to actually make an application to the Secretary of Education under 16 VSA, Section 563(2), concerning this board's decision. And the Secretary of Education will determine at that time whether or not the AOE accepts this plan for the sound administration of the school district. So it's a multi-step process. If this motion passes and if the AOE approves, the short version of what would happen, I know people will have questions, but the short version of what would happen is that any student who is a resident of the Windham School District would be eligible to attend the Townsend Elementary School for the remainder of this school year. We will set up transportation with using the Windham bus to get students to Townsend from Windham. We already do that at the secondary level as well. Once that has been approved, any parent who decides that Townsend is not convenient under the definition for geographical consideration under 16 VSA 821C, which is a statute that allows parents to request to pay tuition to another public school in an adjacent district. The board could hear those cases on a case-by-case basis. And if approved, could grant tuition to a different public school in an adjacent district. And I'm going to take a moment there just to pause and tell you about the adjacent districts, because I know, again, there'll be lots of questions on this. But Windham is adjacent to not only the West River District and then designating Townsend, which is a part of the West River District, but Jamaica is also part of the West River District and therefore could be considered a school in the adjacent district, as is Newbrook. Other SUs who border Windham also have districts in them that also contain public schools. Floodbrook, sort of to the northwest, Chester Andover to the north, and Grafton Athens to the east, are also 3 public schools that are different SUs that would potentially be able to take students at a parent's request under 821C for geographic considerations. And the board would hear that at a future meeting. In the meantime, anyway, so that would happen. The intent of this board at this time is that this is a short-term emergency measure. It's temporary, and there's an intent of the board to reoperate next school year. This is not a permanent decision. In fact, the board, if you're asking, does not have the authority to close a school permanently. Only the electorate of that town has that authority. So this is a short-term emergency measure. It is not at all a statement by the board about how the board intends to operate moving forward after the school year. It is really just about this school year. And yeah, so that's the sort of the nuts and bolts of what this motion is about and what the plan is. Again, for this board, it's a 2-step process. It's approving this motion and then authorizing the attorney to apply for the Secretary of Education for the plan to be put into effect. If the Secretary of Education accepts the plan, then the plan becomes in effect. And we have reason to believe that is a hopeful thing. At that point, once that's been approved, then families who found, again, that Townsend was not geographically convenient for them could apply to a public adjacent school to the board, and the board could approve to pay tuition to those places. All right, I think that's it, Dan. Was there anything else that you're looking for me to report out on?
Thanks,
Or was
Bob.
nuts and the bolts? And I can certainly talk about anything else in the meantime as well that you'd like. Just feel free to call me when you need me.
Yeah, and I appreciate all that detail. One thing I'd like to touch on, if you wouldn't mind speaking just a little bit more, is the consequence of not making a motion like this, right? Like what could be the potential consequence if we did not move forward?
Right. Well, so there's the obvious impact to kids, which I think we're all kind of having the back of our minds around what's happening educationally. But putting that aside, even the Agency of Education does have the authority under statute to actually do what we're already suggesting, or what the board is already suggesting. They have the authority to do that. They have the authority to do that on a permanent basis, or other plans that they might propose. So the board is it's been intimated that the AOE has been talking about these things. Windham School District, I think in part because of the lawsuit, is because of what's alleged to be going on at the school in the lawsuit, that there's a lot of scrutiny by the Agency of Education at Windham School. And so a decision like this, while it may feel dramatic to some, could be less so than what the Agency of Education actually has the authority to do. And as an example, they could force the Windham School District into another district. And so there's things like that that could happen to the community or to the district, that the hope is that going through this process and having the Secretary of Education's seal approval, if you will, on this plan, at least on a temporary basis, that will short circuit something happening which could potentially be longer term as far as implications. So some of those things that they have the authority to do might not be temporary. Does that answer what you're getting at, what you're answering, Dan? Yeah.
It does, and it bears repeating that this decision, right, is really predicated on those possible consequences, not only of the curriculum and our hiring committee not finding a suitable candidate, but also the possibility that we would not have voter representation as a board, right, if some of those possible consequences occurred, right? We as a community, we as Windham may lose the power that we have to direct our own district. And I just want to make sure that's clear before we do go into public comment.
So I'm not sure who's facilitating at this point, but you do have two hands up already. I don't know if there's any other board members that want to speak.
Sarah E's had her hand up for quite some time. So go ahead, Sarah.
Okay. Hi. So it's definite, right, that the decision was made that it's closing?
Well, we haven't voted yet.
Okay, so I will ask all of these hypothetical as that. So, my questions are, I'm assuming Marco and the art teacher have signed contracts that if the Althea, we are down here privately, please. I'm very sorry about that. So I'm assuming that they're under contract, and with the contract, will they still get paid if the school closes? And then I have a follow-up question depending on that answer.
Yeah, do you want me to try to field that one?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yep. So that's a complicated question. And actually there's a third person who is in that mix as well, as Glory. So we have folks who have different types of contracts and different types of agreements. And so each person would be treated individually through the nature of what they have as an agreement. I think the board is committed to doing what's fair and what is appropriate for each person. And obviously because the impact there's a potential impact to Townsend School as well, obviously, with these students moving there. And so there's a potential for some of these staff to be absorbed in some capacity by the West River District for Townsend, but we would need to explore some of those things that cannot be explored really until the decision is made. But it is the board's intent to ensure that all of the employees are treated 100% fairly and with dignity and respect. And legally, of course.
Okay. So that was kind of hard to hear all that because there's a lot of background stuff going on over here. So does that mean that those three would then be absorbed into Townsend and still have their jobs?
What it means is that I can't really answer that part. The specifics of what would happen to each one, I can't get into.
Sure.
So, but we would try to ensure that there was an opportunity for placement or some other arrangement made. So.
Great. Secondly, to follow that up, if the other arrangement that's made and for kids who are deemed geographically not going to Townsend, what opportunity is there for maybe the art teacher and Marco to then hang out with a possible homeschool experience? Is that an option?
I mean, whatever parents decide to do on their own as sort of a home study pod, if you will, would not fall under the Windham School District or the Windham Central Supervisory Union. So that would be whatever, that would not be something within our control or you know what I'm saying? So it would be something you'd have to do on your own.
Okay. And then lastly, how does this decision of school closure affect the Thursday morning farm experience at Meadows Bay?
It's a great question. It isn't one that we talked about at this point. So we would have to explore that, I think, a little bit. And we've had no conversations with the farm.
No, none.
At this time, we've had none.
Okay. Do you have any questions? No. Okay.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, right, per what we said in the motion, right? It is a temporary ceasing of operation, so it's not the same as closing. In fact, we as a board do not have the ability, the power to actually close a school.
Right. So thank you for clarifying and sorry for miswording that. So ceasing operations from January to June, that's still 6 months of change and transition for all of our kids. So I was curious about the things that I asked about.
And I don't disagree, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, everyone.
Bridget Corby, you were next. Then there's Michael Pelton and then Crystal Corby. Go ahead, Bridget.
So thank you. If the motion passes today with the intent of starting after break in Townsend, but we're still waiting for the state to approve it, do the families that are currently enrolled in Windham have the ability to get the ball rolling with Townsend to start that, preparing that transition before Townsend's on winter break? Just so we can, like as families, know what's going on, getting our kids ready, all of that stuff.
Sure. Dan, do you want me to handle that one too, or Abby?
I can say what I know, which is, we've already have been in discussion with Townsend, and we intend to get principal and staff with Townsend along with the parents prior. We don't have details yet, but we're looking into on all of that. Bob, do you have any more on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that we recognize that the transition it's a transition. And transitions are hard, and change is hard for kids. And the experience that they have in Windham in a small school, a 2-room schoolhouse, for these students to be shifting into Townsend Elementary School, which is a single grade classroom per grade, is a very different experience. And so there's going to be some tumult, I would say, and we want to ensure that the transition is as smooth as possible. So we will work very closely with the staff at Townsend to make sure that is as smooth as possible for families, and more importantly for the kids.
Okay, thank you.
Michael Pelton.
Hi. I'm wondering, Bob, if you could discuss a little bit about what about what homeschooling options look like and what resources the SU/district are obligated to avail to homeschoolers. And then B, I would like to request that the board contemplate allowing access to resources in town for homeschoolers, i.e. perhaps maybe use of the building or maybe some of the materials that are available in the building, so on and so forth. Thanks.
All right. So part one is really the only question you're asking me about. The other one is really more for the board to make a decision about. But so the process of becoming a home study student is that the family would put in an application with the Agency of Education. And to be honest, I'm not sure of the extent of what that application is, but a lot of people do it. And so I assume it's not terribly difficult. Those students are approved. Once they're approved from the AOE, they come off the roster of a public school. And so they have a responsibility to submit their plan and their updates to the agency through a regular liaison. think on a yearly basis, but maybe more so. I'm not sure exactly. Under statute, students have access to different types of programming at public schools within the SU which they reside. So a home study student, for example, who wanted to take, let's say the family didn't feel comfortable with 5th grade math, and they wanted to get the student in the math program at Townsend Elementary School. They would have the right to have access to that math program. And so Townsend would describe the schedule, the time and day that would occur. The family obviously would be responsible for their own transportation to get them to that math program, and then they would leave following the end of it. That's an example. There's other things they could have access to. There's a limit to the percentage of core subjects that you get access to in the public school if you are a home study student. The top of my head, I want to say it's like 40%, but that's just off the top of my head. Someone may know better than me. But yeah, so they can continue to access certain activities through the school, designated school, which in this case would be Townsend. Does that answer that part of it for you, Michael?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Crystal Corview, and then Emily Goyette.
There was a second part to Michael Pelton's question.
Sorry, I think my microphone was off. I was trying to respond to Michael as well. We also have access to VTVLC, which is like an online curriculum through the school, through the state. So that's another option to look at, and that's kindergarten through 12.
The one thing, let me add to that though, the one thing about being a home study student is you're not part of the student count for the school. And so when your budget is created based on a long-term weighted ADM, which is, as Dan has been studying up on, part of the finance plan, those students would not be factored in your count. So they come off the list. So when you're developing a budget, there is a potential harm to the district by having students not be enrolled in public school.
And to be clear, that census is done in October, so not into October 2024. So if the scenario was homeschooling until then, and then reapplying into a Windham school next school year, that would still be a part of the census and would not affect the ADM.
Part two of my question, would the board consider allowing access to resources in the physical building / location?
I don't know what that entails.
Yeah, I think a lot of research would need to be done on, there's going to be certain, say, fixed costs and things to the school budget from, this FY. That we'd still maintain the facilities, right, the building. I'm not sure how it works. I guess this is outside the SU, right, Bob? So I'm not sure how community use of a community facility works within the district without the SU maintaining, right? Yeah, I think there's a lot we would need to understand around that, Michael. But I mean, certainly, given the information, open to the idea.
Yeah, I would request that the board look into it. My thought is if there's a group of individuals with, let's say, a half dozen kids that want to be doing some homeschooling stuff, maybe a central location to meet once a week or something like that would be good. It would allow folks to get together, increase socialization, that kind of thing. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Crystal Corview.
So my question is, does this mean that my child's tuition to Townsend will be paid for?
I can try to answer that, Dan, without getting into any specifics, that this decision would, if this passed today, would take effect as of January 2nd. So any costs incurred from January 2nd for the rest of the school year would certainly be paid for by the Windham School District.
Yeah, to be clear, this is any student who is a resident in Windham School District is eligible. So yes, that would include yourself or your student, your child, excuse me.
Thank you.
Okay, Emily, you're up next, then Dan Corby.
So I just had a question about there are several kids already enrolled at the mountain school at Windham, and they're very settled there and they're doing wonderfully. And we definitely don't want to move our kids from that school. So is that accepted under what's spoken about here tonight? Would they be able to continue going to the school they're currently enrolled in?
I can try to answer that for you. If this passes the way that it is motioned, and parents are accessing alternative schools through 821C, that statute only speaks to public schools in adjacent districts. So the mountain school is not a public school, so it would not be, it would not fall under that criteria.
But I'm just kind of wondering, because actually I think it would cost the town less money to tuition to an independent school, because the cap at an independent school is less than a cap at a public school. So I don't know why you would, disrupt kids who are in a great learning environment and things are going so smoothly. Why you would, incur that change for no apparent real reason. Definitely not financially anyway.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I think it's really more just about the statute. The statute doesn't allow for that. The statute only talks about the public schools in adjacent districts. So I don't think the board actually would have the authority to do that.
Yeah, that's correct. It's not within our powers, deemed upon the board. So, we wouldn't be able to make that decision in a vacuum.
But it's right on the AOE website, so I don't know why it wouldn't be in a statute.
What do you mean? What's on the AOE website?
Yeah.
Talking about the cap to go to an independent school, the voucher would cost the town less money to go to an independent school than it would a public. So I don't understand why.
Yeah, I think you're right about the financial elements of it, and I think that would be true if you lived in a school that was a non-operating district like a Stratton. That is absolutely how it operates in places like that. But that's in this situation, because we're talking about a short-term emergency measure. The school is in concept still operating, and students are just being sent somewhere else for the short term, and so therefore we would fall back to the 821C, which does reference only public schools in adjacent districts. So yeah, it isn't, I'm not debating the financial side of it. You're absolutely right that it is less expensive than the announced tuition of some of these public schools around us. But
I just want to say that the BRSU and its adjacent district, and they fall under the guidelines of the BRSU, and MSW accepts money from Wardsboro and Stratton.
But they're not a public school though. They're an independent school.
Do you have a follow-up, Emily?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Emily. I believe it is Dan Corby and then Bridget Blanchard.
Thank you, Abby. I'm only asking since it was brought up twice in the way you guys frame stuff up tonight, in that the board does not have the ability to decide on closing the school. I'd like to understand, as a voting resident in this town, what is the proper procedure in order to have that vote, because the last time it was petitioned to hold a vote to close the school, it was shut down by the board. So I'm really confused as to the proper channels for the townspeople to enact a vote along these measures. If we're saying the board doesn't have the authority to close the school, then they shouldn't have the authority to block a vote on the school. Can anybody clarify what the proper process is there?
Well,
yeah,
no, absolutely. I imagine this is more of a question for VIII and and the SU. So, Bob, do you know?
Yeah, I mean, the way I understand it is that process is the process you would follow. I think the process that the Windham voters did in the spring by bringing a petition to the board is the avenue you would follow to do that. I also understand that the board doesn't have to accept that petition.
So I understand where you're coming from there, Bob. So then, Abby, I'm putting this one right back at you then, and I appreciate her response because you were the one that delivered that message back to the town. If we are in this predicament and we're saying the board does not have the authority in the best interest of the townspeople to make a decision, what will you accept to bring a vote back to this town by town meeting time this coming winter? What is the process you would like us to follow to make that happen? Because the town deserves an opportunity to have this debate again.
That's a great question. However, what this discussion and what we're talking about right now is very different from what you're asking. So I think as far as legal guidance goes, Bob, you can definitely share the legal process, and because that's what we're being guided from, as to how that works. And we were given information on what was different. And that was that we did not have to accept that petition. And there was a lot of reasons why that petition was not accepted. But I want to stay focused on the conversation as you're looking at right now. And Daniel, I don't want that to seem as though that's not something that the community should not have the ability to have that conversation. But as of right now, we're in a very different situation as to what the purpose of this meeting is. And I would like the questions and folks that are involved in the discussion to really try to keep it focused on this particular situation and what people's thoughts are on it or any decisions are made. Okay. So thank you much. Is there something else that we could answer for you?
That's fair. And I fully respect where you're coming from. As I stated, the only reason I brought it up is because a board member addressed it themselves. So I wanted to follow up. I would ask then that for the next board meeting, it is an active agenda item for an open conversation, because the board has never addressed with the townspeople why you don't have to accept the petition. So if you can commit to that, then I can rest right now.
So just to clarify, you're asking for the board
to put an active agenda item for an open discussion with the parents around how we can go ahead to have a petition and a vote again around the school. I want to understand the legal underpinnings that we received as a town, that as a townsperson, I've never understood because it hasn't been discussed.
So I'm just going to intervene here and I'll let the board decide what they want to put on the agenda. I suspect, so we have a regular meeting on Tuesday. I suspect that if this goes through as the motion and second has been made, there may be some parents who come to the board with some 821, I'm not calling 821C requests for tuitioning elsewhere. It might be a long meeting already. So maybe the commitment of the board could be to consider it in an upcoming meeting, but not specifically this one next Tuesday, if that's fair, Dan.
100%, Bob. Totally respect that. Thank you.
Yeah, the other part is that, Abby was standing, this is a new board, and, certainly we can, have the discussion.
Okay. Bridget Blanchard, and then it's Aaron Kehoe, and then John Gordon.
I just wanted to, sorry, I came in a little bit late. And so Bob, you're saying that the tuition is only approval to a public school. Is that's what I heard?
Yeah, that's the statute. And it's, if you're interested, it's Title 16, 821C is the name of the statute. And yeah, it covers the statute is specifically about public schools in adjacent districts. And so I mentioned earlier, the adjacent districts to Windham Town are West River. Technically, I'm saying Floodbrook, but I think it's technically the Taconic and Green district. the Chester Andover School, whatever district that is in, and the Athens Grafton, which is, I think is called the Windham Northeast District, as part of the Windham Northeast SU. I don't.
So even though the BRSU, the towns, Jamaica abuts up to the town of Winhall, even though that those towns are connected, the BRSU is not considered an adjacent district?
Well, Windhall's not a public school, so that would not be considered a public school, regardless of where it's located. It is an independent school, proven independent school. So, and you have to be adjacent to Windham, not adjacent to Jamaica. But I think like the Floodbrook, the district that Floodbrook is in, and I could be wrong. I think it's called Taconic and Green, is part of the BRSU as well, right? And it's just
yeah, I think it is.
And so that, because Floodbrook is the public school in that district, that district adjoins Wyndham's district, that is the one that you'd be, under statute, be allowed to request permission to go to.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, the 821 is going to be addressed at a different meeting.
So if this gets approved by this board, what the parents would do is if they did not wish to go to, or have their students be sent to Townsend, then yes, you would have to request specifically that your child be tuitioned to one of the public schools that meets that criteria.
Okay.
Which, again, I think would be in total would be Jamaica Village School, Floodbrook, Chester Andover, or Grafton, Athens Grafton would be the schools that would fit that criteria.
Okay. Thank you.
And just to add to that, it's also dependent on additional motion for us to get a decision from the Secretary of Education. So it would be that geographical concern would be after that decision is landed by the Secretary of Education.
Yeah. If you were late, this is a two-step process. The first motion is to temporarily send students to Townsend. And the second motion is to request from the Secretary of Education to submit an application to make this happen. So it's like a two-step process. And then the third step would be parents, if they chose elsewhere, the public part, then it would be that'd be a third thing, but that wouldn't happen at this meeting because we have to hear back from the Secretary first.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Aaron Kehoe and then John Gordon.
Hi, everybody. So question is, I understand that this is, an emergency statute going back to the AOE. Bob, could you tell me where it says in the emergency statute that a school district can say where they're going to send the school children, even though that's not within their actual district?
Yeah,
why isn't it not choice? I mean, that's really at the bottom line. Why isn't it a choice?
Right. No, that's a fair question, Aaron. And the statute, which again, just for people who are keeping track at home of the statutes, we're all becoming like little mini lawyers here, is Title 16, 563, Section 2. 563, Section 2. And what that says is that a board may take any action as required for the sound administration of a school district. And what that means in essence, and what we've been advised by our legal counsel, is that we develop what that plan is and that we submit that application to the AOE for approval. And to really get at the grit at what you're asking is that the AOE is significantly more likely to approve said proposal if in particular it's operating within the same SU. And so they want it to be as clean and simple as possible. And I'll say this too, I think there's a pending lawsuit against the district that also further complicates things. And so that's a factor as well. So the pitch is that we have a very simple one school designation and that it fall within a BA school that falls within the same SU. And that's what the AOE is really looking for with this type of situation.
Okay. So even with that statement, and I'm sorry, I guess to pick it apart, I mean, if it wants the same SU, then why is it just being said Townsend? That's that I have nothing wrong or against Townsend, but there are people who live on either sides and, you know, that may not want to go there. Some parents have said they wanted to send their children to Chester and Floodbrook. And so again, I think this just kind of goes back to the board not listening to the parents again. I mean, they're not being listened to.
Right. So the only response I give you, Aaron, is that those schools that you just named are not in the SU. And so we have to, if we're picking a school in the SU, Townsend, we came to the conclusion that that would be the most commonly acceptable school based on location and based on their capacity to receive as well. So that's why Townsend was selected.
Okay. So then the next part of my question is, this does not designate any answers to any of the tuition requests that have been put forth that we still have not had an answer to from 3 meetings ago, correct?
That is correct. And my assumption is that the board could hear all of them at the next meeting, including parents, but they could hear all of them, I guess I'll just leave it at that. Yep.
All right. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. John Gordon?
I assume Townsend has the capacity for the kids, right? It's not going to be something where they get down there and next thing we know, a classroom's over capacity.
No, you're correct. We have checked that out in advance to ensure that not only they have the capacity for every single student from Windham, but that they have all the breadth of services ready to accept them, provide support for them, and really create an environment where it would be the most welcoming situation and supports for these students.
Yeah, correct. We've talked to Townsend, and this is not a surprise to Townsend. So they are in discussions with us and want to meet with the parents and have the willingness to handle the influx along with additional supports from the SU.
Okay, thank you.
Michael Pelton?
Hi, given the last few years and where we stand now, I'm wondering if the, I guess, SU at this point, / Townsend is going to conceivably put in extra measures to provide appropriate mental health counseling once they arrive there.
So, I mean, I can answer that a little bit. I think one of the things that we are hoping to do is to bring along the counselor that's been working at Windham and have those hours, that contract transferred to Townsend Elementary School to provide those sports and, of course, a familiar face for the kids. We know that that's not a lot of hours, but that's the hope, is that we'll be able to do that. And, you know, whatever other staff that Townsend and West River deems that they might need, we will see what we can do and find folks to fill those positions. But they do have a nearly full-time nurse and a nearly full-time home-to-school liaison who provides support for kids. They have 2 full-time people in a I'm trying to think of the name of it. They call it a step room. It's like a de-escalation and support room where they teach kids skills on how to get regulated if they're struggling with that in a classroom environment, and get kids back into class. So there's a wide array of supports that they have there ready that they've already implemented for their own students. That will be obviously that the Windham students will be a part of that community and be accessing those supports as well.
Will there be any extraneous access to counseling, given that Townsend, I'm assuming, already has a counselor on board?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the need and also, again, the availability to find counselors. So that's always part of the challenge. But yeah, I think we'll be able to do that. We also have a behaviorist in the SU who is currently, I think, situated primarily in Newbrook, but consults with Townsend for supports as well with kids. And that person would have access to students to be able to help the teachers and help the kids and the families as well. So There's kind of a big, I would say, like a big wraparound support system in place that Townsend has been running with and functioning quite nicely for many years now, that they've built as a team, and it's a very welcoming place. And I think we will figure out what we need. If the needs are beyond what's in place, we'll figure out what that is, and we'll do our best to get staff, if there's qualified staff available, into those positions to support them. I just don't want to say like I can guarantee we can roll in a clinician if there's no clinicians available on the market, if you know what I mean. But we'll certainly do our best to get people in the right places to support the kids.
My second question is, I'm assuming that the tuition it's like a flat rate tuition. What about the potential for added expense to the district? I know that like special ed, for instance, is shared between all of the SU, but I'm wondering about other resources that might show up that we might be sort of on the hook for above and beyond the tuition rate.
Yeah, fair question. So special ed is not part of what you'd be on the hook for at all, because that's SU managed anyway. So that's sort of, your kids are going to get that in any public school they go to, paid for by the WCSU, regardless. But things like phys ed, art, music, nurse, counseling, library, things like that are already in place at Townsend and can, won't significantly change with the absorption of students from Windham. Those students would just sort of fit into the programming that's already in existence and access those offerings the same as every kid from Townsend is accessing them. Is that what you were asking?
So there won't be an increase in the tuition rate based on our kids going there. There's not. It's just going to be the tuition plus special ed, effectively.
You got it. Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. Not sure if that's Russ or Joyce coming.
No, Deborah Bucknam had her hand up before I did.
Yeah, and I'd like
question.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Russ. I'd like to just make a comment that we would like to leave comments, public comments, to residents only of Windham at this time.
Okay, well then I have a question, and mine is directed to Sean Toohey, the attorney for the WCSU. There are two legislative bodies in town. One is the select board, and the other one's the school district. If the school district will not accept a petition to close the school, do we direct it to the select board and have it done at the town meeting under select board jurisdiction?
And Russ, I'm gonna say that I think that what I heard earlier was Dan say that he felt that the board would take it under conversation, and certainly that would involve research about how to go about it. So I'm gonna ask us not to put Sean on the spot in the public session for that purpose, because his role is to provide legal counsel to the board.
Is there any other discussion?
I'd just like to make the comment that that there are people who have spoken at the meeting that are not residents of the town, and I'm wondering why you're limiting it to just the people who are residents of the town.
I mean, I think that's pretty standard procedure amongst.
Well, then how come Sarah Edelman spoke and she doesn't live in town? And how come Jenna Kramer spoke earlier and she doesn't live in town?
I spoke in this because of the fact that my child is a student at the school, Russ. So
yes, but you're not a resident of the town, so the exception was given. So why doesn't Deborah have a chance to talk?
Once your kids are students in the Windham Elementary School, Russ, your opinion will matter. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that given the circumstances and what is being discussed and the motion that is on the table, that the conversation is for the people who are directly involved in this decision process. So I hear what you're saying, Russ. And I think everyone that has spoken has had direct involvement in this current situation. So that is, I guess, what I will say for that. Is there anyone other discussion regarding this motion?
I saw Sarah. Did you raise your hand again?
I did not raise my hand. It was the clap emoji for Abby's support. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Bridget Blanchard, I see your hand.
So is this the first time that the parents are hearing about the kids going to Townsend in this meeting right now?
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
I was going to say yes, it is. This has all been coming at us fast and furious based on our legal consultation and reporting that out from an executive session to start the meeting. And so, yeah, it's coming at us quick and fast.
And I just want to comment that select parents from the hiring committee were pulled, and we did talk with them about options as well, just to get an inside scoop into the larger group of parents. But yeah, what Bob says is correct.
Okay, I was just wondering because it might be a big hardship for some of these families who live on the other end of town to go down to Townsend for their kids to go to school. I just didn't know if anyone had talked to them about it besides, but you said the hiring committee, so that's probably
Correct.
3 of the families, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And I believe Bob alluded to transportation will be provided, assuming Townsend.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
No problem.
And just to echo your question, Bridget, I think for a lot of folks, this meeting came out, and this is it not only for the families but staff. There's a lot of things that have to be considered. So I hear your concern and thank you for bringing that up. Michael Pelton, is your hand raised again, or is that up from before?
Yes, it is. I just was echoing and echoing. For staff and for community members, this is definitely a very fast rollout. There are, I guess, 24 hours notice, and that's it. So it's not like there's been a huge reach out to the community to allow them to be notified that there are potentially drastic changes going on at the school. I know there's a lot of volunteers in the community and folks in town that I'm sure will be fairly shocked, let's say, that this has been rolled out so fast. Thanks.
And I don't disagree. I mean, I want to bring back up the point that, a part of the reason for the statute and for working with this is because the other consequence could be that we face more permanent choices that the board cannot dictate, and we would have no ability to challenge. I just want to make sure that we reiterate that is a part of the consideration.
Bridget Corby, and then it looks like Dan Corby.
Thank you. I'd actually like to argue that nothing about this has been fast. It's December, and there were so many opportunities along the way that would have allowed us to not be here, and decisions were made that I personally would have made different decisions. So yes, 24 hours to get the notice that it would be specific to Townsend versus other options. That wasn't a long time, but we don't have time. In speaking as a parent with kids in the school right now, if this doesn't pass and we take our time to figure out other options, we run into coming back from school vacation still in Windham, and there's no sub lined up or anything like that. So yes, I think it's a lot to take in with it being a specific school. I totally understand that that's not everyone's first choice. And I think Bob outlined, especially on the, one side of town, I think it would be easy to argue the geographic piece of it. This sort of has to pass for those of us that are in school, and our kids have just been kind of dragged through this. This has been an uncomfortably slow process, and I'm sure it will be shocking to the community, but that's not my concern. So I very much urge the board to pass the motion and lay out a process for folks that don't want towns in, and help them through that process with that open communication. But it's really important to those of us that have kids in school that we move on from this and we come back from school vacation in a safe, healthy environment with a real plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. Dan, did you take your hand down or is it still up? Oh, there it is. Go ahead, Dan.
Just jumped the gun, Abby. That's all. In echoing kind of what Bridget's saying, I understand this last bit of information has come a little bit fast, but we've been waiting since October 17th, since the first issues were addressed around the school. So nothing has been fast. It's been ridiculously slow. So to that tone, we have a week and a day until we go on Christmas break, when schools are going to be shut down and us as parents will not have the ability to discuss with schools. So we have a school board meeting, I believe, scheduled for next week. When will we know if this motion, after it passes today, gets approved by the AOE, so I can submit my geographic letter and have it approved within less than 5 days by you all? Because that's the time frame we're looking at in order to make sure my kids know where they are going to school on January 2nd. And we are here because, once again, we were ignored by parents back in June and earlier in this entire fiscal year. So we deserve a response, and it needs to be fast. It needs to be even faster. So I hope if this motion passes, which I anticipate it will, that the next steps can be outlining clear action items as to when us parents need to do the next things in order to shore this up for January 2nd. Thanks.
I can respond to the timeline a little bit, Dan. I think that once the board, if the board does this and makes this and passes both of these motions today, that we have a letter crafted ready to go to the AOE immediately. I think that you could begin the process of looking at schools and calling places and talking to people immediately.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, and I echo that, at least from my perspective as a board member.
Thanks, Dan.
Crystal Corview? I can't hear Crystal. Can anyone else? Crystal, is your audio working? We are unable
Can't hear you, Crystal.
Hear you right now, Crystal. What we'll do, Emily Goyette, your hand is up. Crystal, maybe you can figure out your audio and we'll come back to you, okay? Go ahead, Emily.
Hi, I just wanted to follow along with what Bridget Corby was saying just a minute ago. We would really appreciate it if you all could work with us families who are in another school that's not a public school, because our kids are already settled and they're really happy and the learning is awesome. My son comes home and he can't wait to go to school the next day. So it's super important to us that we get to stay where we are. So if the board could please consider working with the families that are going to the mountain school in Windham, we would so much appreciate it.
Thank you, Emily. Is Crystal, did she disconnect and try to connect?
Yeah, I think she dropped off. I think her service must have been shabby, is my guess.
Well, it is Vermont. Any other discussion? Okay, well, I just see there's quite a few people on the meeting today, so it's a lot of scrolling for me right now, so I apologize.
The only hand you have up is Deborah Buckman still.
Does the board want to hear from Ms. Buckman?
If I may say, I represent 6 families in Windham, so I know I'm not a resident, but I think I know what the residents' position is.
To Russ's comment, you have not been called on yet by the chair. And Abby, I leave it up to you whether or not you'd like to call on Deborah.
Abby, I think that you could call on Deborah as long as everyone's on the same page that if this is if it gets into a legal question, that we're going to refer her to our attorney if it becomes something that's beyond the scope of the board.
And just to be clear, not during this call.
Correct.
Because our attorney is intense. Thank you.
Okay, so Deborah, if you've heard those parameters and you feel you can ask a question and realize we may not be responding to this, then you may go ahead.
Thank you. Just very briefly, I really appreciate your allowing me to speak. You were talking about 821C, but 821D also provides that if the town or the district can authorize payment to independent schools, and I'm not sure why the district didn't make that decision and just decided to allow tuitioning to Townsend, because I think as someone else has indicated, if you did that, it would be less expensive, or the tuition is lower at an independent school than it is in Townsend, and the 3 families that are at Mountain School could retain their children there. So it looks like that the district, the board can make any kind of emergency decision under 563. And so I don't know why the board didn't just decide very simply to allow tuitioning to both public and independent schools.
Oh. Okay, thank you. Crystal Corview, I see you're back on, and then it looks as though Jenna is on. Crystal Corview.
I apologize. Did you hear my question?
We did not, but we did say if you came back, we'd get you through. So go ahead, Crystal.
So my question is, you guys are going to submit this plan to the AOE. They can accept it or deny it. Do they also have the option to decide that Windham will become a non-operational district?
So what I understand within the secretary's authority is that they could merge Windham into another district. There's one distinct possibility, which would potentially allow for the building to remain open, but be part of another district. So if staffing issues were an issue, then other things could be arranged. But the reality is we don't know what they might do or might not do. And so I think that's what Dan spoke to earlier, the idea of the unknown versus the known, and having this very specific plan going to the agency feels more contained of a solution than the potential for what they might do. But I think they can do whatever they want to do within the grounds of the statutes that guide their work. And I'm certainly not an expert in that.
Thank you.
Okay. Jenna, I saw that your hand was up. Did you put it down or was it up?
Oh, no, I just took it down because I thought I was in queue.
So does the board agree to allow Ms. Kramer to speak?
In light of Deborah speaking, I see no reason why not.
Okay, go ahead, Jenna.
Well, thank you. So I won't keep you too long because I know it's getting late. And I just want to say that I know right now you're thinking of the details of where your children are going to go tomorrow. I just hope you hold in mind what I saw the first time I went to the school, when I thought of the first time I was a reading specialist in the first few years. I went to a school in Brookline, and I saw a teacher say to a student after they had this science experiment, and it was snack time. I was a reading specialist, and this teacher was saying, she was talking to me about reading scores, and then but the kids were wanting to keep up this experiment with oil and liquid and playing with it in bags and playing with it. Anyway, she was talking to me and she said to them, "Oh, can you use this?" And they came up and said, can we want new containers." And so she was just giving them containers and talking to me. And I remember thinking that was the first time in all my years I had seen someone just supporting kids thinking, like, off the grid of the lesson. And when I saw the school, I thought, we could do this all the time. And I started calling that the spillover effect. Like, when kids are talking about what they're learning during snack time all day long, that's what I want for my kids. And so what I did was buy the cheapest house in that neighborhood to put my daughter in that school. And so I get what you're going through. I do get what you're going through, and I can't imagine what it's like. But I do see the potential of this school to be something earth-shattering, something amazing. And I know if you hire a great team, and you can do it. And if you get all the support you need, you can do it. And we're really close to having this great thing. And I know you're focused on the moment, and I don't blame you. And I'm sorry for all of this, but I just wanted to weigh in.
Thank you. Aaron Kehoe, I see your hand up.
Yes, as Bob just stated, he's trying to make it this as simplest for the AOE as possible. So I'm just asking, is there a way to amend this motion to say Townsend and the Mountain School? Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Bob, go ahead. Given the statutes, I believe that's not an option. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've heard sort of through conversations with the AOE is that they're looking for something that's incredibly simple, that's within the SU, that's public school oriented, and that's what they're prepared to approve.
Does that answer your question, Aaron?
I mean, that is an answer, but we have, 3, 4, 5, 6 kids that are already in Windham, that live in Windham, are Windham residents that go to the Mountain School. So the simplest, I think, answer would be to allow tuition to the Mountain School.
Unfortunately, that's not up to us to decide. It's the Agency of Education to really make that distinction. But thank you.
But wasn't that part C? That you could do that? You just need to add that in.
Yeah, under guidelines that they have to approve. Is that understood?
In other words,
yes, but they'd have to improve everything.
If the board put that in and the AOE rejected it, then the AOE could act on and do whatever they wish to do at that point. So that's the danger of that sort of a pathway, Aaron. And what they might do
us parents have been asking since, I'm going to echo Bridget and Dan here, because we've been asking since July. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Bridget Corby.
Thank you. I actually have a question for Alexis, who couldn't raise her hand. So she wants to know that if this passes, do we have to enroll in Townsend, or those of us that are already currently enrolled in Windham, do we automatically become enrolled in Townsend for the beginning of January?
Yeah, my understanding is that short of the parents who are granted tuition requests out under 821C, potentially at next Tuesday's board meeting or later, I suppose even, the rest of the remaining parents would be enrolled at Townsend, and then if parents wish to home study, they would in essence unenroll their student to go and apply for home study under the AOE.
Thank you. Is that Crystal Corview? Do you have your hand up, Crystal?
I'm sorry. I know you guys just want to be done. Bob, is it possible for these parents that are in the school that are prepared to send their kids to Townsend, like, even if the AOE denies what the board is going to send them, obviously they can't stay at Windham, so they're gonna have to go somewhere. So the AOE is either going to merge them or close them, and ultimately these parents are going to be sent elsewhere. So I guess I'm wondering why they have to wait to start the process, because either path is going to put them in a different school.
Not sure I understand what you're asking. You're asking about the parents who do choose to go to Townsend, why they have to wait?
So the parents that are currently attending Windham School,
Yep.
like, why can't they start the enrollment process to start school after Christmas break? Because ultimately, even if the AOE says, no, we're not going to accept your temporary closure, they obviously can't operate. They have no staff. So the AOE could say, we're not accepting this. You're going to merge, which we know they're going to say the West River District. Or they could say you're going to close. So my question is why do the parents have to wait for the decision to enroll them and have them start after Christmas break?
Well, so now I understand. So you're asking, like, why do they have to wait? Why wait till after the break? If that's what's going to happen anyways. I would say that I think there's an important element to how this process works for the kids, and to have a transition at a time when there's a logical transition, to have them have the opportunity to, share moments with staff and with their fellow students. Because remember, some of these students are going to be in different classrooms in Townsend, and so to be able to have some time together as a community for another week plus a couple days, I think there's value to that, honestly. And so, so having that time to kind of wrap things up and then have a clean break at the holiday and then have them restart a new school, I think actually it's probably better for kids, to be honest with you. And I know it's an extra week, but as someone pointed out, it's been a while.
That's what I'm saying. They would start Townsend after Christmas break.
Yeah, that's the plan.
So what can they do the enrollment process now and say they're starting after Christmas break?
Yeah, there isn't really an enrollment process for these students because they'd be being sent there. So there isn't a process. They would just begin. But yeah, there's going to be an opportunity for parents to see the school. Or maybe we do a tour. Maybe, there's things that we can do in the next week to help the transition be smooth. But yeah, no. Parents don't have to sit on their hands in the meantime, for sure.
Yeah, and there's a willingness from Townsend to have those type of meet and greets, tours, conversations with their future teachers, et cetera. So that's exactly what we're suggesting, Crystal.
Thank you. I'm not sure that people understood they could start the enrollment process now, or if they thought they had to wait until you guys got confirmation back from the AOE. So
No,
thank you.
Now, as soon as the vote is taken, I think we're good to go. And I think as soon as the vote is taken, parents are good to consider their requests for 821C. And as soon as the vote is taken, tomorrow morning, my people will begin this process. We'll have conversations with staff up at Windham. We'll have conversations with staff at Townsend, central office people, HR, and we start to roll things through. So.
Any further discussion?
Abby, you have Marco's hand up.
Oh, Marco, please. You have the floor.
Hi, everyone. I just want to make a brief comment to advocate something that I think is pretty important for the kids. And that is that regardless of how this all plays out, where kids end up, and this doesn't sit on the SU or the board or the parents or the new school or the old school or wherever they end up, these kids day to day have spoken with me about a lot of the things that are going on with them emotionally. And I really want to advocate that as a community, we prioritize and are intentional about making sure that they have people to talk to and process what's going on with. I can only do so much as a teacher that's in this school, and they've been talking about stuff that's not just about this year, but the year before that, and the year before that. And some of it pertains to the school, and some of it pertains to home. So mental health is very important, and long-term, I really do feel that it can become something that is an impediment to the success of the children of this community and of any community. So, yeah, please keep the kids in mind in terms of, seeing that they get counseling or a way to process this, because it's been tough on them. Kids have cried around me about stuff that's been going on. So please don't lose sight of that, regardless of what happens, and it doesn't fall on any one person. It falls on every single person here, every single person. We all have responsibility, so that's all I have to say.
And I just want to jump in and say very well said, Marco. And I think that's something that with a politically charged realm that is Windham the last several years, and all the debate and discussion and the back and the forth about this and about that, like this is about kids, and we have to make sure they're centered in all of this. And I just want to say thank you, Marco, for saying that.
Yeah, thank you, Marco.
Thank you very much, Marco. And I agree. Couldn't have said it better. And I know I speak behalf of all of the board in our appreciation for you and the support of our kiddos through all of this. So thank you for everything that you do. If there is no further discussion, I guess we can call the question. So I don't know.
Do I need to ask for all in favor?
I probably might be best, since we've been on this phone for this discussion for a while. Repeat the motion, and then we can go into voting.
Okay, just to repeat the motion once more. Motion to temporarily cease operations at the Windham School, elementary school, due to staffing issues, and to pay tuition to educate students at the Townsend School for the remainder of the 23-24 school year, effective January 1st, 2024, which is required for the sound administration of the Windham School District and is proper under Title 16. We already have a second. All in favor?
Nay.
Aye. Rory?
Rory, can you hear us?
Did we lose Rory?
She's muted.
Yeah, but I think she was having connection issues or was working out the hotspot.
It also looks like she's via phone, so I think it's what, *6 to unmute if you're on the phone.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you.
Ooh, I learned something. Can you hear me?
You can now.
Okay, so my phone said I was unmuted. Yeah, so I guess that explains why you didn't hear me the entire meeting. That's okay. My vote is yay.
Motion passes.
So,
okay.
Rory, you have the second motion?
Yeah. Give me a second. I lost my document with my connection issues.
Rory, I can read out the motion if you can't get to it.
Sure.
All right. I motion to authorize the school district's attorney to make an application to the Secretary of Education for a decision under 16 VSA 563 Section 2 concerning the board's decision. Can I get a second?
I second your motion.
So Dan, let me just, so this again is the second part. So under the statute, 563, Section 2, the board is authorized to make any decision. As we mentioned, that for under using sound administration of the school district as the test, they may at that point also seek the secretary and the advice of the attorney general. And when the school board sends such a letter that this motion is for, the secretary, in consultation with the attorney general, will decide whether the action contemplated or taken by the board, in this case would be past tense, taken by the board, under this subdivision is required for sound administration of the district, and whether or not it's proper under the subdivision. And the secretary's decision is final in these matters. So that's what the next step is. And that's what the motion's about.
Any discussion?
There is
Sure.
no other discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay. Motion passes. So it is 17:17, 5:17 p.m. And I move to adjourn. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good night.
Good night, everybody.